start with, give us an introduction. Who are you? What do you do?
Hi, my name's Emily Barnard. I'm a Perth-based pinup model and makeup artist. I specialise in latex and lingerie shoots.
How did you first get into modelling?
I first got into modelling back in the days where I was using a lot of the alternative forum-y type social medias, and I was asked by a photographer to model for him. I didn't never really see myself as model material, but I thought, why not? I'll give it a go, and I absolutely loved it, and I've been doing it ever since. That's over 10 years.
And why do you model latex?
I love the way that latex looks, I love the way it feels. I like that it empowers me and it makes me feel good.
So how do you normally prepare for a photo shoot?
So generally with a photo shoot I will prepare in a number of different ways depending on whether it's my concept or a concept that's been brought to me by a photographer. I do an equal mix of both. There's always lots of discussion along the way about what the theme is going to be and what the desired results are. I'm one that quite often likes to have sort of an inspiration image or a reference image of what the completed look should be. So I always make sure that I discuss what the hair and makeup's going to look like, what sort of styling options they want, as well as the location. Sometimes with the location shoots it also involves going and scouting for locations, so my husband and I will quite often go for a drive together to scout the appropriate location before the shoot, if there's not been one already suggested. We will also go through and make sure that, so for a latex shoot typically, before the shoot we'll make sure that all of the items that we are planning on shooting that day are nice and clean. That they don't have any imperfections or any rips or are in need of any repairs at all. And I will pack a light-proof bag for when I'm travelling to the location, as well as the appropriate dressing aid, shine spray. We use Big Gloss, as well as having a shining cloth on hand. Usually I'll also take a few different options of shoes, some different earrings, jewellery, that sort of thing as well.
You mentioned shooting with other models. Do you quite often get newbie models, people who haven't shot in latex before?
Yeah, so my husband has a latex brand called Super Bonito Latex, and as I do makeup as well, quite often I sort of take over sourcing the models and making sure that we've got someone that will either fit the garments or has the sort of appropriate look that we're looking for. What that means in a context for us is that via some of the platforms we utilise to source models is that we get some newbie models who've never worn latex before or don't have any idea how to wear latex. So it often will involve us having some discussions about it beforehand as to what expectations we have for them, as well as, for lack of a better way of putting it, advising what will be involved in the process of putting it on. And if they've got, for example, long nails or talons and they're not sure how to put it on, we will help them get into the latex and make sure that they look the best they can.
Cool. Has there been any standout shoot for you?
I've been quite lucky in that I have worked with a number of amazing photographers over the years, and I have some regulars that I shoot with often. One of my favourite shoots that comes to mind off the top of my head right now is a Katy Perry inspired shoot that I did with my friend Juan Carlos from Nito ENT Productions, where we did an entire set, multiple changes, in a family friend's property up in the Perth Hills, in and around the pool.
So you mentioned you're a Perth-based pinup model. How does that differ from a regular model?
So in terms of the fact that I do pinup modelling, it means that most of my shoots and the way that I style myself is more of a vintage inspired aesthetic. What that means is that you'll traditionally see me with winged liner, sort of your more retro inspired hairstyles like the one I'm rocking today, and generally either a red or a dark red lipstick. Sometimes I'll deviate from that and I'll go a little bit different, but usually that's sort of the realm of what I shoot. Not because I don't want to try different themes, but because I've been doing pinup modelling for over 10 years now. It's what I'm known for, and that's specifically what photographers ask me for when they want to shoot with me. I'm quite lucky in that I don't necessarily do a traditional pinup often. I kind of do a more modern take with a vintage inspired twist, and I will usually combine elements of sort of pinup with, for example, latex. I do a lot of latex pinup modelling and utilising different incorporations and different styling options to include all of those options.
I noticed this isn't a very pinup outfit today. This is a lot more goth.
I do like some goth styling as well. When I first started doing modelling, I was doing sort of a combination of pinup and more goth inspired stuff. But as the years have gone on, my sort of style has shifted a little bit to being more sort of pinup as opposed to goth, but I don't necessarily do pinup in a traditional pinup way. For example, there's another Perth-based pinup by the name of Miss Lady Lace, and she does true vintage, not very much reproduction stuff, but because of the size I am and the availability of vintage clothing in my sort of sizing, I don't tend to do any true vintage. All of my stuff is reproduction stuff. And then I've got the combination of latex that I'll wear as well. There's quite a few of the dresses that Aubrey from Super Bonito Latex has made for me that are sort of my own modern sort of styled pinup inspired outfits that I've shot in over the last couple of years while he's been operating.
And how do you find being not a size zero in terms of latex and modelling? Do you find it hard to find outfits or photographers to work with you, or whether people like it or not?
I've been quite lucky, and I don't tend to cop a lot of flack for my size and my choice of outfits. Every now and then I'll get a horrendous comment from usually Middle Eastern men actually, and it'll be in Arabic or whatever, and you'll have to utilise the Google Translate, and it'll say, "You look like a beached whale," or something to that effect. I tend to try not to let it get to me. I used to be much bigger than what I am now. I had a gastric sleeve a few years back, and so I've lost a fairly substantial amount of weight. Subsequently, that created a new problem in that I have lots of excess skin. But I'm very fortunate in that because of where we live, because we're based in Australia, there's some absolutely fantastic plastic surgeons that are affordable enough that I've been able to get some of that sorted. But unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, some of the excess skin removal that I still have left to go has been postponed for the moment until the pandemic calms back down. If you've ever seen one of my behind the scenes selfies, you would see that when I'm doing makeup shots, this is usually the brick wall that I pose in front of. It's got the best natural light due to the sun coming in through the fly screen.
Wow, you're looking really great. How about we do some more questions? This time, maybe a bit more latex specific stuff.
Oh, more latex specific? How about I slip into something a little bit more comfortable? Much better. Slipped into a dress that's been made for an upcoming photo shoot by Super Bonito Latex. That has been temporarily postponed due to the global pandemic, and I thought I'd give the dress a whirl with a darker lipstick by Ari Cosmetics called Latex.
Of course, because we are talking about latex today.
Absolutely, so it's fitting to have a shade named after it.
So how long have you been modelling latex for?
I've been modelling latex for about 7 or 8 years now. The very first lot of latex I ever got, I wore out to an event which I went out to with my cousin. I had done a little bit of searching online and had found a company called Black Sheep Latex who makes some absolutely amazing stuff. At the time, most of what was being shot in terms of latex fashion was kind of your standard black catsuit, and I wanted something a little bit different, so I had a pink and purple polka dot bra and girdle set made, which I wore as a set for a couple of photo shoots after that, including at some very, very incredible locations. I wore that set for a tattoo show or like a art exhibition done at the historic Fremantle prison, which was really, really cool.
What first got you into latex? I mean, you've spoken about how you like how it feels and stuff, but really, why did you kind of think about wanting to buy some?
So the very first thing for me, as I initially came into latex kind of almost by accident, at the time when I ordered my first set of latex, it was just starting to be in vogue with all the online based magazines. They were all doing latex themes. And I thought to try and stand out a little bit different, I'd order some and organise a shoot and see how it went. That's kind of how I got my start into wearing latex, and then as I kind of got my first couple of pieces, I discovered how much I liked the way that it felt on my skin and how it made me look, as well as the fact that it kind of gives me a little bit more confidence. I spoke earlier about how I've got a lot of excess skin, and part of my favourite thing about after I'd lost my weight and as I was shrinking but before I had my excess skin removal was that all the latex sucked everything in and up, which is a really good thing when you've got 10, 15 kilos of excess skin. It makes a real big difference. And I love how confident it makes me as well.
Oh, cool. Which fashion brands have you worked with? You mentioned Super Bonito Latex. Obviously, that's your husband. But yeah, who else do you normally like to wear?
So in terms of latex fashion, we've got quite the collection from when so before my husband started making stuff. So he originally got into it as I was shrinking to kind of keep me in latex, as I was shrinking and keep that confidence up. But we've got pieces from Black Sheep Latex, like I stated earlier. We've also got some pieces by Rubber Bunny Latex, Libidex. We've got some pieces by Donna Matrix as well, who's an absolutely amazing friend of ours who's...
You love to model for? Any latex designer?
I would love to hit the big time and be a Westward Bound model or a Lady Lucy model, but know that it may not happen for me. I also really love Eustradia's designs as well. I would love to model for them.
With modelling latex specifically, how does that differ from a regular photo shoot? What sort of things you have to take into consideration?
So you need to take into consideration the environment that you're shooting in a little bit more. You need to consider how much daylight or how much sunlight you're going to be exposed to as to whether you need like a daylight UV protectant spray for your garments when you're out in the sun, as well as what sort of surfaces are you going to be around. Is there going to be surfaces that may cause your latex to rip, tear or snag, and what would you need to take with you to minimise that risk? Do you need to take a little section of towel or a little bit like a spare shirt or something for you if you're going to sit on something that's rough to make sure that there's no damage done to the latex? You also need to make sure that you've got shine spray and a shine cloth to get you all nice and shiny to make sure it's all consistent. This is nothing worse than having inconsistent patches in your latex. You want it to be shiny the whole way through. Unless you're going for a more matte look, then in that case you want to make sure it's matte the whole way through. You don't want it shiny in some patches and matte in others. You also need to consider, while I'm thinking about it, can you get into the garment by yourself? Do you need an assistant?
I'm guessing by that you've had plenty of fun getting other people in and out of latex.
Yes, so with the Super Bonito Latex stuff, we've done a number of big photo shoots and also some events like a runway which we did for Club Freak a year or so ago now. And that very much was involved getting other people into and out of latex, as well as having assistants on hand to be able to get people dressed whilst I was doing makeup and that sort of thing as well.
Who would you say is your biggest influence in the latex world? Who do you have the most respect for?
Well, that's a really tough question. So there's lots of really amazing people that are wearing latex often, but some are not necessarily everyday latex wearers, but are quite prevalent in the imagery that you'll see through the latex world. The ones that come to mind for me are Dita Von Teese and also Rodney and Velvet, who both are not just latex based, but are in a lot of the imagery and have lots of they inspire a lot of the designers to create some pieces as well, and that's why I find them quite inspiring.
So what would you say, what was your best reaction you've ever had while modeling latex?
So my husband and I tend to do latex in public a fair bit. We have historically done a lot of photo walks through the Perth CBD in full latex, and also tend to wear latex for formal nights when we go out cruising. And the best reaction I've ever had was I was going up in a lift on a cruise ship and having all the little old ladies kind of avert their gaze and back into the corners of a round lift, just not knowing where to look. It was the best thing ever.
And so that kind of sounds like a pretty extreme example. Was that a more outlandish outfit, or was that something a bit more basic?
No, it was a full-length sort of black gown with a diamond cutout in the front. It was just the Latex, I think it's a Latex diamond dress or diamond gown. So it wasn't super over the top. It was just, I think a lot of the people that were in that elevator with us had never seen anything like it before, so they just had no idea where to look. But on the other hand, we've had a lot of experiences where we've been going through and doing photo walks in public, and kids will, for whatever reason, love latex because it's shiny or something, and they kind of, the very first instinct they have is to go and touch you. And you know, they're kind of always mesmerized and they'll just kind of hold your gaze. But then sometimes those same kids will just run into like your bottom at full pelt just because.
Well, what would you say to someone who wants to wear latex in public? I mean, should they go for something a bit big like a dress, or would you recommend starting a bit smaller?
It really depends on your comfort level, I think. I think if you don't mind having all eyes on you, then by all means go for a full dress or catsuit pants, something like that. But if you're wanting to just slowly start incorporate it and kind of feel out how comfortable you are, start with a smaller piece. So like for a latex top with like jeans or something like that, and incorporate it slowly. One of the things that I love about the sort of pieces of latex that we have in our collection is we have lots of things that we can mix and match. So quite often I do layer different types of fabric. So I may have like a latex skirt and like a lacy lingerie bra, or may do like a cotton t-shirt, latex skirt, that sort of thing.
And speaking of latex in public, what are your thoughts on Kim Kardashian and Lady Gaga wearing it in public?
I like that there's so many celebrities that are embracing latex as a whole. I think that's quite good because it's exposing it to a lot more people, so a lot more people are seeing it. But I wish they'd stop picking such horrible freaking colours, like the skin colours, where it's like that non-transparent stuff, or just like, I think there was an outfit that Kim Kardashian wore recently that was the shade of poo. Pick nicer colours, Kim. Go a plum, or antique gold, purple, literally anything.
Well, do you think the designers are doing it on purpose then?
I don't know. Maybe.
So what sort of barriers do you think there are for people kind of starting out in latex? Not so much fashion models, but just your regular Joe Blows.
I think a big component of what stops people is that the cost, for starters. A lot of people don't know what sort of things they should order or can order as their first pieces to kind of get them started, and as well as like where to kind of what their budget will allow. I'm a big believer in that you get what you pay for, in terms of quality and the finish of work involved, but you also want to be mindful that if you are on a budget, there's plenty of places that you can buy things within your budget, but it's good not to go to a designer and say, hey, I would like a custom catsuit made to these measurements, and expect for them to make it for you for $100 or whatever. That designer has to put the time into custom make the pattern, make sure it's all sized to your specifications, and then actually make the garment to your specification as well. And that's not something that's cheap. That's not something that doesn't take any time. It's something that it does take a lot of time to get it done and to make it. So I think it's very important to be mindful that you need to have realistic expectations for what you're asking for and the price that you expect to pay. If you've got a small budget, I'd suggest making, maybe getting things that are off the shelf in like from a size range product as opposed to a custom fit thing. So you can get things from like Latex, which they have sales often, or you could go to Latex Catfish, which is a lower quality, but again that might be more fitting to your budget. So just be mindful that you do get what you pay for, and that the other thing I think that puts people off is having stuff rip and tear, because the way that latex kind of rips or snares or whatever, it's not necessarily, it'll generally not be in the seam, it'll be just out of the seam. And once you get one of those small little holes or a small rip, it has the potential to just kind of explode out on you, and have the entire rip go and you come out of your outfit, which I've had happen to me multiple times. It's just one of those things. It's not something that happens all the time, but it is something to be mindful of. It's just to make sure that you are very careful with it. There's a lot of places that do stuff where you can just buy off the shelf. For example, you can buy pre-made stuff from Honey Bidet. They've got, a couple of sizes in their things, but the latex they use is very, very thin, and a lot of the time, a lot of the people when they're buying it don't know how to put it on, and sometimes the sales people can't instruct you how to actually put it on either because they don't have experience with it. So it's one of those things that because the sheeting that they use is very, very, very thin, you need to be very mindful about how you put it on and not use fingernails and that sort of thing. Otherwise, that's how you end up with rips and tears. Latex can be repaired. That's a big thing that needs to be noted. You can repair it, but when you get to a point where you've got, say, a cat suit and it's got a rip from the foot up to the shoulder, that's going to be where you start getting into very, very pricey repairs, and you may be better off just ordering a new one.
Well, you mentioned some stores there. I mean, are there brick and mortar stores where you can just walk in and buy latex off the rack?
Yeah, so the Latex stores in Australia, you can walk in off the street and you can buy latex just off the shelf. There is a few brick and mortar stores around that do sell latex. There's not any in Perth that do any of the custom fit stuff, but if you're happy with like a generic branded molded latex item, you can buy those sorts of items from almost any adult shop. There's an adult shop in Sydney called Max Black, which has a fairly decent range of a couple of different brands of latex where you can buy things where they've got multiple different colour choices and a few different brands, and they have men's and women's stuff, whereas some of the shops only have women's stuff. So for example, Honey Bidet is a female only shop, so there's not really anything that's tailored to men, but there is options available through like the brands that you can get from the adult stores, like the Sharon Sloan stuff, and I think there's a couple of other ones in there, sweetheart. He nods at me.
So given that you've mentioned that some of the stores don't carry men's stuff, do you think that's a barrier for some people? I mean, do you think latex fashion is more catered towards women or men, or?
I don't think it's necessarily catered more to one gender over the other. I think it's just the availability of what's in store that may pose a barrier. So for example, if you were to go out in Perth and you said, yep, I want to buy some latex, as a female you have more options than what a male would. But that being said, none of what you could walk into a store and buy is custom fit. It's all off the rack stuff. And it generally tends to come in black or red, and that's it.
So I guess it's time to bust out the big F word, and that is fetish. How do you think latex fetishism plays into all this?
I think there's a lot of different people that do wear latex. It's not necessarily a fetish thing for everyone. For some people it's more of a fashion thing. There's a New Zealand-based model that my husband and I both follow called Veil of Tears, who wears latex specifically as a fashion thing, but because she posts stuff on Instagram and her account's a public account, a lot of the people that do message her keep implying that it is a fetish thing for her, and for her it's not. For us, we're not necessarily heavy rubber fetish people, but we do like to wear latex and incorporate it into like going out and that sort of thing. I think for us it's more of a fashion thing as well, as opposed to a fetish thing.
Well, in that case, do you worry that people associate you with fetish culture?
Not really. We are involved in the fetish community. In Perth a fair bit, we go to a lot of events and that sort of thing, and we do know a lot of people through that sort of environment, so it doesn't bother me that I'm associated with that. But from that being said, because so for a fair while, a lot of the stuff that Super Bonito was shooting was often me. There is quite often a perception that I'm Super Bonito Latex, and no, I just model it often. Sometimes I act as a creative director where I organise the hair and makeup and the models and design the looks to kind of complete what the shoot is. But yeah, it's more of a misconception that a lot of people think that it's me behind the brand, but no.
Have you got any upcoming shoots that you might want to sneak peek?
I haven't really got any shoots sort of really planned, just due to the global pandemic and a lot of the government restrictions that are in place. Once all of the restrictions are lifted, then that'll be when I start getting into things a little bit more. We've got plans to shoot the dress that I'm wearing right now, but very loose plans. Haven't really planned out the entirety of the shoot yet because it may be, it may be 6 months before they lift the restrictions. It'll be a waiting game to see what will happen.
Cool. I think that pretty much wraps us up. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.